Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guest.
It's Mr. Solis.
How are you, sir? It's been quite some time since we last met.
It's true. What was the last time? Crown Jewel?
Correct.
Goodness gracious. I've been all right. Things are, changing for the better at school, as we wrap up this semester. Can you imagine, Jack? There's like a month left in the semester. But a couple of pieces are falling into place that makes me feel real confident about spring.
That's good to hear.
And how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. As Dom and I discussed earlier today in our earlier episode, we are both approaching our finals weeks.
Yes.
I am in week 8, and so that is usually the start time of my finals week of the fall quarter.
But that'll happen after next week, right?
Yeah, and right now we're just like in the prep stage for all that, and then as I mentioned before, hoping to luck out tomorrow when it comes to jury duty so that I can put all my attention and focus onto prepping for my finals.
For all intents and purposes, if you've never served jury duty, there's probably a lot of focus you can give it even there. You'll be sitting in a room full of people who don't want to be there and will also be giving their attention to something else while you kind of wait to be assigned or not assigned.
Yeah.
Bring a book, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to, because if it's going to be a long process and I'm going to be there for a while, I best bring some type of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of entertainment, there was plenty of it this Saturday.
Leap and Lizards, Jack, I let you down at Crown Jewel, I let you down at SummerSlam, and I let you down for whatever the WWE did in September. But I saw this show!
Yeah, and honestly, there's such a huge difference, especially not only with the previous events in this one, but even the upcoming event. I just learned Survivor Series is apparently this Sunday, and I was like, where has the build-up for that been?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I was listening to a podcast that I like, and they were all acknowledging the fact that they haven't been inundated with the phrase, it's the one time of the year where SmackDown and Raw go head-to-head in direct competition.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's exciting that it's happening right at the beginning of the fall break. And there's a couple of matches that, I'm going to tune in to see. Big E versus Roman Reigns.
Sign me up for that.
Charlotte versus Becky Lynch in a battle that's kind of kayfabe and kind of not.
Yeah, I saw that too. I think they just announced Usos versus RK Bro, and from what I was seeing, like in the little recaps of what's been going on Raw tonight, your prediction of them lasting through 2021 and into WrestleMania season is looking more and more correct.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so good. That's so great.
And then, it just seems like the entire wrestling world as a whole is just, if you could say, like, on a roll lately.
Yes.
I want to mention it now because I totally forget where it was that they announced this during the actual pay-per-view. But as we know, the previous weeks on Dynamite, Rocky Romero shows up, and apparently the Best Friends group in AEW joined Chaos. And then there's a tag match announced for Wednesday, and they got me from the moment I heard Orange Cassidy say this because I knew who it was going to be. They're interviewing Orange Cassidy saying, hey, there's going to be a tag match between Hardy and someone from the HFO against him and a partner of his choosing. And his words are, he goes, what's that group I chose? Chaos? Maybe I'll bring a couple of dogs with me.
Yeah. Implying, of course, the Stone Pitbull himself, Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah, and I think it was happening either at the same, or I think it might have happened like a couple hours after. I don't know for sure when it happened, but New Japan was also having their essentially New Japan Strong show out here. It
was a Battle in the Valley, and I don't know, did you see it?
I saw clips more.
Don't tell me nothing, Jack. Don't tell me anything because I want to see it. And I'll tell you what. I just want Buddy Murphy versus Okada to be as amazing as it should be and as it could be. And don't tell me nothing, Jack. Don't you dare tell me anything. I will come to your house and I will do horrible things and you ruin this for me.
But seeing that Ishii was on that card, it makes sense that now he's going to be coming out here. And even though it's not the most exciting matchup to see him in terms of who he could wrestle out in AEW, there's still the prospect that he stays out here like Suzuki had his tour of America. He could do something similar with AEW.
Because in New Japan, they're doing the World Tag League thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, they're doing that. That's what they do before Wrestle Kingdom season. So, let's go. I think they're going to be here for a couple of weeks. And Rocky Romero was in that match you mentioned. And I think the commentary was just constantly inundating the viewers with references to Okada as a sign of, his imminent debut across the Forbidden Doorway.
And speaking of debuts, I have to bring this up on the podcast, and it's a semi-spoiler for you for Battle of the Valley. But I saw it after finishing Full Gear, and it just made my night even better. I won't spoil how the match finishes, but after the match of Moose versus Juice Robinson, out comes the formerly known as Bronson Reed, making his New Japan debut.
I saw that. He shared that on Instagram. I'm super excited for him and you. But I'll tell you this, Jack. The second he posted that picture of himself and excited about his future prospects, I immediately unfollowed him.
How so?
You understand why?
How so?
I unfollowed him on Instagram.
No, but why?
Oh, because if he's going to be a Gargano about this and just post immediately after an event, this exciting change and this exciting update, listen, man, I don't watch it live. I need time. There's a ton of wrestlers I've had to just go, nope, bye, deuces, stop it. Ciampa, stop it. I want to see this first for myself.
I understand that feeling too. It's happened to me a couple times. There have been, especially with a lot of the New Japan stuff. It's they're ruthless with it. They immediately post as soon as it happens, and you're
New Japan, the company are so bad. It was middle of the night, and I go, come on.
Yeah, so, I won't spoil you about the rest of it, but yes,
kudos to Bronson Reed, Jonah. What's his last name?
I think it's Jonah Rocks.
Oh, kudos to Jonah and you. A big fan of his. You're only gonna reap the benefits of his new prospects.
Yeah, and I don't know how it slipped my mind, especially because when it happened, I told you we would reserve a bit of time at the beginning to just quickly go over it, because at this point it almost sounds like a broken record. But WWE released more talent, and though the initial reactions were always going to be negative and just confusion, here we are a couple weeks later, and just the prospect of a lot of these guys popping up sooner than later is more than overwhelming.
You're talking about Buddy Murphy in a dream match, Bronson Reed in a dream situation, right? And how many guys on this card from Saturday, Full Gear, were let go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're in the greatest of positions. I'll just pepper those in, just reminders. This is somebody who was under the WWE banner and in that, in that toxic environment just a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you what, Jack, for as many of those releases that happened on Friday and we're beating a dead horse, I think the really big thing to recognize is that if they've released over 100 people over the last 2 years, I think that implies that 2 years ago they had upwards of over 100 people under their employ.
Yeah, it's insane to think, and at that point you can't really fault them for not having everyone on TV, because that's just too big of a roster.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was always a thing that people like always picked up on was that, hey, your roster's getting kind of bloated, and the same things kind of happen, not necessarily happening with AEW, but people are starting to get those concerns now that, hey, you don't want to bloat your roster too much,
Yeah, for sure. But I think AEW is signing these guys to like unique deals, per appearance deals where it's not exclusive and they can work other places,
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then a lot of them that like weren't necessarily the talents that started with them are being signed to, like, if you want to say in wrestling terms, short-term deals, like, compared, Daniel Bryan got a 3-year deal compared to Scorpio Sky, who's been there since like essentially the beginning. He got a 6-year extension, so like they're showing emphasis on keeping those in-house guys, and then a lot of the guys that they're bringing in, it's either per appearance or they sign them for, in terms of wrestling, short terms, because they want to get them here, get the matches that they want out of them, and then, hey, by the end of it, if you want to resign and we want to resign you, we'll do it, but if not, we can agree to part ways mutually.
Yep.
And
what a neat symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and
as opposed to the WWE, who, the rumor was they were just stockpiling wrestlers so that they wouldn't work in other places.
Yeah, and it's just crazy, especially because this latest wave, if you thought like the previous waves were crazy, it was like this one took a lot of people by surprise when you see guys like Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Mia Yim, Ember Moon, all these people that like were just getting released, and you were like, man, some of these were pretty prominent names and stuff, but because of their prominent names, you leave a bit more reassured that they're going to find work anywhere, that they're going to be like a lot of them are going to be can't miss prospects for a ton of these companies.
Agreed.
Yeah, and when me and my dad were like coming up with like destinations for a lot of them, we found ourselves referencing like a plethora of companies, which just shows like how well the wrestling business is prospering right now, that there's all these different available companies for these people to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's the prospect of contracts running out, such as Kyle O'Reilly, Kevin Owens. It's like going to be a crazy couple months especially heading into 2022. We'll see what happens.
And at the forefront of an exciting year of wrestling, 2022 will have for us and all wrestling fans at the very front. You know who's going to be there, Jack?
Who? Randy
Orton and Riddle, side by side, arm in arm. RK Bro, never stronger.
Yeah, that my prediction from Crown Jewel is really going to age terribly. But with that said, I guess it's about time we get into the main event of essentially this podcast.
Yes.
And that is AEW's Full Gear 2021. And it had a lot of good build to it. As we talked about, WWE at times like not really having that good of a build. There was a couple matches, of course, in here that felt like they were thrown together maybe last second, but there was a ton in here that they either had a lot of build towards it, yep, or they utilized the short amount of time they had to really give it a good enough build.
Agreed. Are we doing the buy-in as well?
I watched the buy-in. Was a decent enough match, especially, for the buy-in, of course, just to fill in that little bit of time that they had.
Yeah, and for folks listening, the buy-in is a free show on YouTube where you get a match, but also a ton of hype packages around the matches. You're supposed to watch that and think, yeah, I'll buy this event. It's like one last commercial.
Yeah. It was Shida and Rosa versus Jamie Hayter and Nyla Rose, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know how this match came together, but it was decent enough, and at least they're giving the women more time, which has been like a main advice of mine towards them.
Sure.
Is like to just start getting them more time, especially because that's how you're going to draw from different audiences, because like not everyone's going to like the same type of wrestling, and there's certainly both a hardcore and casual fan base out there that enjoys women's wrestling, so if you want to really grab onto those people and their attention, do stuff like this where even though it's technically like the pre-show for it, they're giving them enough time for a good enough match to fulfill that time.
Agreed. And to speak to the packages, the hype packages that I described, one thing, Jack, that I cannot get over is AEW's insistence on using like that serious ESPN tone to talk about every match. You know what I mean? Like Hangman versus Omega warrants these like heavy, you know, it's do or die for Adam Page. You know what I mean? It's like Kenny Omega is, you know, he's undisputed. Like that necessitates that tone. Every match on the card does not necessitate that tone.
Yeah, I feel you. There was a couple matches where it was like I get wanting to build hype, but there's not really that much hype behind it.
It really made me long. It actually made me long for the WWE pre-shows where it's a panel and it's Shucky Quack Quack and it's Booker T and, you know, Lawler, and, you know, things are a little lighter. They're saying a lot of the same things, but it's a different tone. So you've got Excalibur talking about as if somebody is gonna die. Chris Jericho in the Inner Circle versus Dan, what's his name, and what's they're called.
Yeah, and like within a lot of those like packages, you have them like doing like talking heads, and you're kind of just like, well, why don't they follow suit like with WWE and just have them doing all this talking like on a panel before the show instead of like hype packages for matches that don't necessarily need the hype package.
Because they all need the hype packages. Ugh. Gross and dumb. And, ugh. But which one got me? I think it was like, maybe it was, which match like definitely did? I think it was the Inner Circle versus the America, what's the group called?
America's Top Team?
America's Top Team, yeah. It was like, you guys are taking yourself way too seriously now.
Yeah. But the start to the show starts off with, you know, when I was talking about, you know, the comparison of contracts, you know, and in-house guys getting longer deals, you know, we start off with two guys who, you know, even though they built their name a lot through the indies, you can really call them two of AEW's homegrown talents, and they even referenced that a lot during this build, as they were called two of the four pillars for the future of AEW, and it's MJF versus Darby Allen.
The pillars thing is funny to me too. Do you know who the other two pillars are, Jack?
Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara, correct?
Yeah. Like, the promise that these guys are the pillars of AEW, like the future of AEW, is a funny shot to call.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think of MJF, and I really want MJF to do something. But what that pillars thing tells me is that these guys aren't going to do anything for a while.
Yeah. I feel you, especially like with the...
Are both these competitors, Jack, in their 20s?
I believe so.
I think I heard commentary say that. And I just thought, you know, I have this frustration with MJF that he hasn't done anything in 3 years. But if the guy's like 27, goodness gracious, he has all the time in the world.
Yeah, looking it up right here, MJF is 25 and Darby Allen is 28.
Okay, got it.
So... reasonably young, but I get you, especially because I have to say,
brother.
I have to say, how my brother Mac, how old are you? 25, same age as MJF.
That's incredible. Maxwell Jacob Friedman is the same age as Marco. Wow.
Yeah, and I get that feeling of them not like really doing as much, especially MJF, who hasn't gotten a single title.
Nope.
You know, and like my main gripe with MJF too is that when it comes to his promos, I get, you know, taunting the crowd, but it's like when it comes to his actual competitors, it's like other than like maybe striking below the belt with some of his insults towards them, he doesn't really call out his opponents as much. So it's like you're mainly taunting the fans and not really your opponents.
Yeah, I'll bring it up when we get to Dan Lambert in America's Top Team, but like his style, which he's heralded for, is this obnoxious, like, 8th grader kind of level of humor. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he's Eric Cartman with, like, the mom jokes. And you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Goodness gracious. This is the best talker you all got? Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, but, the whole build for this is they're the pillars, and, again, it doesn't reassure a lot of people when you say pillars of the future, and you're like, well, then does that mean they're not going to be doing stuff for a while?
Well, and MJF's claim is that if there are 4 pillars, one of which is him, he's beaten the other 2. Darby Allen's the last of those pillars that he's got to thwart to be able to say he's better than all of them. And he says that he can beat Darby Allen with a side headlock takedown.
Yeah, and that was definitely a big story point of this match, is constantly trying to use that to beat Allen, and even Allen using it against him at some points to essentially try and make him eat his own words.
Yep. What were the spots that you recall, Jack?
The coffin drop onto the outside apron was just...
Ooh. What about the... What did MJF do again on the apron? It wasn't a pile driver, was it a... It ruins his knees.
Yeah, I think it was a tombstone, actually.
I think so too. Yep, tombstone on the side, on the ring apron. Yeah, destroys his knees in the process and looks so bad. It was so good.
Yeah, and it's always such like essentially like a cringe type reaction whenever I see them do like those spots on the aprons. Like it just reminded me of from last year in your house NXT when Damian Priest took that back bump onto the steel steps like on the outside, and like seeing when I saw Allen going for it, I immediately knew. I was like, oh, MJF's definitely getting out of this. But the way Darby Allen wrestles, he's gonna take that back bump, and oof. The sound it made too just made me like audibly just go, oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm. We almost get some shenanigans because Wardlow and Shawn Spears make their way to the ring, chair in hand. But do they make it to the ring, Jack?
No, as Sting pops out and attacks him.
Yep, single-handedly takes down 2 men in their prime. Because he's Sting.
I think he gets a power-up every time Tony Schiavone screams, it's Sting.
Oh, yeah, agreed.
But, and then the finish of the match is that, MJF and Darby in the middle of the ring, and that's when MJF brings in the skateboard that Darby uses, and he tries to get him to use it because the whole build of this also has been that MJF is trying to break Darby mentally. Darby doesn't use it, gives it to the ref to take it out, and that's when MJF brings out his diamond ring that he has, hits Darby, and then hits him with the headlock to take him out and get the pin.
When you did the skateboard thing, I thought it was really contrite, right? Because I hadn't been following the weekly shows. I didn't know about the I'm going to mentally break you. But for it to be used as a distraction, for him to use the ring and then end with that headlock, I thought, oh, it made a good match, Jack. Great. Because I'm really excited MJF won. I'm really excited he did so nefariously. And he held up, and he did that thing where he promises something's going to happen, and it happened. It's just so satisfying.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, this was definitely one of my favorite matches of the night because, it had everything. They put on a good enough match. They told a story throughout. And honestly, they told multiple stories throughout, as we mentioned, There was, tying in the mentally breaking by trying to get him to use that skateboard. There was fulfilling his promises, which was beating the pillar, beating him with the side headlock move, So, definitely a great match that had a good enough story.
And it had JR at the end, grown like an old man that he is at the prospects of MJF constantly bringing up the success that he had. He's like, ugh, sorry, everyone. It looks like we're going to hear about this for even longer.
Yeah, here's to hoping that it really does let MJF catapult himself into doing more. Yeah, because, people already, they're, not to try and spoil the main event, but they're already doing the prospect of him dethroning a certain champion down the line.
Sammy Guevara, perhaps?
Yeah, there's a process for him, but overall, it was a strong start to the pay-per-view. I really and thoroughly enjoyed that match.
Agreed.
Really great match from the two of them. And, much how they hype up the future, well, the future is bright if those two are the ones going to be leading in the newer wave of young talent that they still have prepared for when they shift out and rotate the older guys out.
Yep.
And next is the AEW Tag Team Championship match between the champion Lucha Brothers versus FTR. And when I saw this match announced, even though they kind of did it with the AAA tag titles on the line on an episode of Dynamite, I was excited for this match nonetheless, even though, kind of predictable in the sense that you pretty much know Lucha Brothers are going to retain. I was excited because of our main criticism from All Out. The criticism being they should slow it down a bit, start integrating more stories, story-based type matches instead of just going all out with the moves. And when you throw in a tag team like FTR, that's almost guaranteed to be there.
Yes, Jack. How did we get what we wanted? We removed the Bucks and we put in FTR.
Very telling.
I mean, I'm just saying. Agreed. We still got like a flurry of offense, especially like when Rey Fenix is tagged in.
Yeah.
And I think Tony Schiavone says, I was just about to say, how is he going to be able to handle these guys on his own? But he is.
Yeah. It's just every time, especially Phoenix steps into the ring, I'm just amazed at some of the stuff he does, because it's like you look at the other cruisers and juniors around the world and like almost none of them are pulling out the stuff that he pulls out at times.
Honestly, if we could introduce a fifth pillar in this pantheon of talent, I would put Rey Fenix amongst the names that were said. I would even maybe think of replacing Sammy Guevara with Rey Fenix.
Yeah, I honestly would consider that too, especially because Rey Fenix is only 30. That's not too far off of Darby and MJF and Jungle Boy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was a really, if I had to describe it one way, it's definitely explosive type match, because there was just a flurry of offense, and yet, even despite that, FTR was still finding ways to slow down the pace at times, start integrating more story points into it,
Yep.
And there was a really funny moment that I didn't catch until after someone brought it up after the show, and that's at one point FTR both get in the ring to stand off with Penta, and you just see Phoenix come flying out from camera view in, and someone made the joke that this is it was similar to when you're playing Street Fighter and you call in your assist because of how quickly he jumps in.
Oh, funny. That's so true.
And
we saw Tully Blanchard get involved as well, distracting the ref long enough for one of the members of FTR to tie Pentagon's mask to the rope.
Yeah, and then, because FTR is the AAA tag champions, winning them off the Lucha Brothers, which is just a glorious oxymoron in a sense, in the fact that...
No, something like that.
In the sense that they are very much not the Lucha style, and, it fits perfectly with their hero personas,
Yes.
Being a non-Lucha team, having these Lucha belts. They try and play it up even more when Dax, starts trying to do the Three Amigos, only to be stopped and Penta do it himself.
I was so surprised at Dax hitting the Three Amigos as many as he hit, and I thought it was so wild that crowd immediately reacted to it. For those who don't know, Saturday, the night of the event, November 13th, marked the 16th anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's passing. So those people in Minneapolis knew exactly what Dax was doing.
Mm-hmm.
How that blankety blank. But that's all right. Pentagon fights him off, hits the Three Amigos himself, and everybody cheers because this is a more respectful homage to Latino Heat.
Mm-hmm.
Ray follows that up with a pretty sick-looking frog splash that should have ended the match.
Yeah, that's one of my gripes with the match is they really went like full throttle on like false finishes. Like there was so many spots where it was like that could have been the ending of the match and it wasn't.
Did Ray Phoenix kick out of a belt hit?
I think he did actually.
Yeah, I think he gets pelted with one of the belts, and it's not enough to put him down. Man's a beast.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have most definitely preferred the frog splash ending to what we actually got. Because
yes.
I think that's the biggest gripe that everyone took out of this match was just it wasn't the best ending for such a explosive, high-paced match.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, maybe it's to continue the feud because, you know, I mean, who knows, you know, what their plans are. But, like, it was just kind of a confusing way.
Yeah, it really kind of landed flat. But, Jack, tell us, if it wasn't the tribute frog splash to end the match, what did end the match?
Yeah, so, you know, the finish is at some point, FTR ends up on the outside. And then they try and pull a switcheroo by bringing out the mask that they wore when they won the AAA titles because they showed up as masked men.
Yep.
And so they try and pull that out. But then, you know, the legal man isn't actually in the match. And so he ends up getting pinned. And afterwards, they unmask and they're trying to get, like, plead to the ref that, hey, that shouldn't count. The legal man wasn't in. And the refs is basically saying, well, how was I supposed to know you had the mask on?
Right. So they were hoisted by their own petard.
Yeah.
And it's reminiscent, Jack, of Full Gear last year when they were pinned after unsuccessfully trying to do flippy things, remember?
Yeah.
They hit a flippy move, Young Bucks capitalize. Here, they're trying to do some cheeky nonsense, and they get beat because of it.
Yeah, and, you know, it's a clever ending, but it just wasn't executed to its I don't even know how to describe it, like, best. It wasn't executed to its best, and the ending more than likely should have been the frog splash from Ray Phoenix.
I think so, but Lucha Bros win. Neat.
Great match, and because, like I said, because of the men they were involved with, they showed, you know, though it might not have been to the extent that people expected, they at least showed some improvement towards getting that story-based telling down a bit for their matches.
Agreed.
And then the next match is one that was one of the few that was thrown together with quite little time, mainly due to Jon Moxley having to step out for a bit, and that is Miro versus Bryan Danielson in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament.
To name a number one contender.
Yeah.
For as little build as this got, Jack, I was so excited for this match, like perhaps more than others that had a lot of build, and I was so impressed by Miro's promos leading up to it, where he like is basically yelling at God himself and saying that I'm going to become champion, not by your will, but by my own will.
Yeah,
he told God he was going to make an enemy of Miro if he doesn't do this, if he doesn't get this done.
Yeah, I really love the character work that he's been pulling off, you know. It's definitely an improvement from when he first showed up, and it's definitely an improvement over some of the stuff, not necessarily all of the stuff, but some of the stuff he was doing in WWE. And, you know, I really love the character turn that they took with it when he lost the TNT title, you know. He immediately went towards, you know, blaming God for his loss, and I like how they turned it into the story here where Danielson even says in the hype package leading up, how come he doesn't look in the mirror and think about what he did to lose that match?
That was so good. That was so good for Daniel Bryan to call out. Oh, wow. Incredible.
Yeah, and
I'm already having an incredible time, Jack, and the bell hasn't even rung.
Yeah, and, you know, they also bring up, Brian brings up the fact that, hey, I actually have never beat this guy anytime I've stepped in the ring with him, which, I never fact checked this to see if it's true, but if so, it's like it adds more to the unpredictability of it. Of hey, well maybe Miro has a chance to do this, and honestly, with the character work he's doing, I don't think a lot of people would have been mad had he been the one to give Danielson his first loss in AEW.
No, sir. And Bryan Danielson is like this perfect shade of of white, where he just shows every and all strike against his body, and you got Miro, a man strong enough to leave some marks on somebody's body.
Yeah, it was honestly crazy. And correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Did the match between Danielson and Suzuki happen before Crown Jewel? I believe it did, right? Because I feel we brought it up on that episode.
Danielson versus Suzuki, I think it happened after.
It might have been, I forget, but that was another match where they really played up, the aspect of just how well those scarring show. And this match definitely also had that, and they even implemented parts of that match into here, as there was points where Miro was just calling for Bryan to strike him, but then when Miro would strike Bryan, down to the floor he went.
Yes, you're absolutely right. This match was like heavily Miro, which I was actually surprised by.
Yeah, and like I said, I was going into this thinking, well, if this is gonna be Paige's first defense, and it's more than likely not gonna be, prolonged till Revolution. It's going to be like maybe a TV special or a special episode of Dynamite. I was like, I could see them throwing Miro at it because,
Yes. I also thought, Jack, that this match had huge implications for the main event. And I also was doing like that fantasy booking, like, no, we can throw Miro at him, He's, having just lost the TNT title, he's a little easier to like book. You know what I mean? He's not like super undefeated and precious.
Yeah.
No, for sure. So, yeah, I definitely was sort of doing that, too.
Yeah, and so it was definitely a sense of unpredictability for this match. And it's funny because similar with this match, with someone undefeated thinking that the person they're going against could realistically beat them, I had the same thoughts for a match later down on the card. But, yeah, this match was just really good, really hard-hitting, as you were to expect from both men. And, a lot of people kind of, they thought like the finish obviously didn't go maybe as planned.
Agreed.
Which, it's obvious to tell that like it didn't go as planned. Like I think some people were saying that they think Miro probably thought Bryan was going for a suplex and not the DDT. But, the DDT was cool to see. And I was watching like someone's review of it, and I really liked the way they broke down this to essentially kind of make up for how the finish didn't go as planned, and that they said immediately after he hits that DDT, Danielson throws him into the guillotine to basically show that, hey, this man Miro's a monster. He probably might not have been put down by that, so let me just throw in some extra offense on him just to make sure he goes down for sure.
Agreed, but you know what I think, Jack? I think he was supposed to hit the DDT and stay in the guillotine position.
Yeah.
I think like just through miscommunication or slipping, he like let go. So he goes right back to it. Because I read that too. And you knew something went wrong because Excalibur, he says, let's take a look at that finish again. And they have the match graphic for the next match. He goes, oh, never mind. I guess we're moving on. And I go, oh no, they don't want to show it again. Because they've been showing replays all night.
Yeah.
Not to happen here. I go, oop, saw your hand. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, and another thing to add too, otherwise, a really great match, and I'll voice my concern after about the finish, or the concerns I had after this finish. Another thing that's 3 matches now, and they were all going on pretty long. Like they were pretty like lengthy matches throughout the night. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm pretty sure the pay-per-view ended at, like, I want to say almost 9.
Yes, it was a long show.
Yeah, it definitely was. But, and then when I saw this happen, I really kind of, like, like the meme, I started, like, sweating and having to go like this, like, wiping my sweat. Because I was like, if Danielson's winning, this gives me the fear that maybe Omega retains and they do a rematch for the title between the two of them.
But here we go. Bryan Danielson, your number one contender for the AEW World Championship.
Yeah, and, you know, I think another thing, you know, post-show, they wouldn't reveal when Danielson is going to challenge, which is pretty, you know, obviously pretty good. You don't want to lock yourself into something, but, you know, it maybe plays up that aspect that this could be happening, you know, much later than we expect it to.
I don't know. You know, to be named the number one contender, I think you got to cash that in pretty soon, or, you know, we're going to become impatient.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with this.
Yes, agreed, because there's, you know, goodness, really painted themselves in a corner, but we'll talk about what corner they paint themselves in later.
And
how many more minutes we got this episode, Jack?
About 3. I just noticed. I thought we had a bit more time.
How good was this show that we're not deviating, we're not distracting ourselves, we're not, you know what I mean, dancing around the match and all the awkwardness? No, we're talking about all the hits, all the moments, all the implications in the booking.
Yeah, this episode is very much reminding me of the past 3 episodes Dom and I have done, where we've just gone from topic to topic so smoothly that you wouldn't even think we were rushing at any points.
Right. If there's a whole lot to talk about, we're going to have to jam it into the next episode.
Yeah, especially because I was thinking, I was like, oh, we could fit, like, even though this was a really long match, I was like, we could probably fit it in. And I thought we had like 10 minutes left, and I look, I'm like, oh, wait, that says 3.
What's the next match?
Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express versus the Super Clique, consisting of the Young Bucks and Adam Cole, in a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Oh, it's those Young Bucks, so you know there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, like, I'm going to say this here before we get into it, and I'll probably elaborate even further in the next episode. I think this match might have gone maybe a bit too long with a bunch of spots in it, but hey, that's what next episode's for.
See you there.